Hey, good people. In this lecture, we are going to be talking about working with groups. And I want to just go back a little bit or just reference a little bit of what we talked about in our previous lecture in regards to working with families and couples counseling. Now, there's a lot of similarities that would kind of cross over when we talk about group selection and group participation from working with families and couples to working with groups in general. So I just want to make sure that I encourage you to read the information again from the previous chapter and compare some of the information that you may read in this chapter when it comes down to how your group will be working and the role and responsibility of the helping professional. So now in getting things started, when we talk about working with groups, we are looking at, again, the type of leader that you would be as a facilitator of a group. And when we're looking at the type of leader that you would be, some of the things we have to be mindful of is the type of training that you have received, your credentials, and are you comfortable and competent in the skills that you possess to run or to facilitate a group meeting. Now, when we talk about being comfortable and confident, it's not so much the idea of, oh, yes, I can do this, I can do this, but truly, have you had the right type of experience and supervision to prepare you to work with within a group setting? So when we're talking about working within a group setting, we got to recognize that there are different types of groups that people may participate in. We have our task and work groups. Task and work groups have a very definitive type of purpose, and they would almost kind of be considered as closed groups, in that not closed that you can't leave, but closed in that everybody in that group is working towards a very specific goal, and it kind of interrelates one with another. The psychoeducational groups would be groups that are similar that we may find with Alcoholics Anonymous or in substance abuse treatment facilities, where people are not only receiving some type of counseling perspective or counseling intervention, but there's a lot of education that comes along with smoking cessation, comes along with substance recovery. It comes along with Alcoholics Anonymous, comes along with weight loss, comes along with shopping, over shopping. So that's what your psychoeducational groups are like. When we talk about group counseling, again, we're looking at our client per se is the group, but we have individuals within that group that we have to be mindful of how they are interacting one with another. When we talk about group psychotherapy, this is where things get a little bit beyond or gets further than your psychoeducational groups. With group psychotherapy, here is where you, the helping professional, are facilitating group members to dig very deeply into, again, psychological and psychosocial elements that may be impacting the problem, the concern, the hurt, the need that they're bringing to the group therapy session. So that takes a lot of skill in learning how to facilitate a psychotherapy support group. When we're talking about working with groups, some of the things that you, the worker, need to be mindful of is, again, as we've talked along the way, the work of a helping professional is you have to have an opportunity to make sure that you explore any biases that you may have. Be open to different types of supervision of your group work, whether it is observation or whether it is group supervision. Be open to that. Group supervision is going to be along the lines of, say, if you are in your bachelor's degree program or your master's degree program, and everyone is in an internship or a practicum, then there you may all meet at the same time and discuss everything that is going on within the group that you may be facilitating. So that would be a good example where you're feeding off of one another for encouragement and also for resources. Observation of group therapy sessions would be that you have a supervisor that would be, again, kind of observing you, whether it be through a two-way mirror, whether it be that they're sitting in on the group session, but they would be there doing an observation and then discussing that observation with you after the therapeutic session is completed. I went too far. When we talk about, again, working with groups and we have recommendations, and looking at the type of groups, or looking at the work that you, the helping professional, can do in providing group therapy. One of the biggest things that you need to be mindful of is that group therapy, again, your overall client is the group, the health and the empowerment of the group itself. But that group is made up of individuals. So you have to allow yourself to encourage your clients to do some self-exploration while they're in the group. It's very important that you identify, just as with the family system, when working with groups, you identify a theoretical framework that you're going to be comfortable working with. You have to have a recognition that there's a purpose to the group meeting. That purpose to the group meeting, if it's a closed group, maybe you're working on a task or it's task oriented. If it's an open group, it may be that it's just allowing clients to have that opportunity to have that self-exploration and receive that input and the support and empowerment from their peers. Again, when you're working within a group situation, we have to think about every participant in that group. And there is a definite need for you to be sensitive and to be aware of diverse issues that clients may be dealing with. And we're going to get into that a little bit later in our lecture. Working within groups, of course, timeliness is an issue, but also you want to make sure that you, the facilitator, have a clear understanding of what you perceive the outcome or the impact of this group counseling session, what it would be for the participants in your group. Now, as we continue talking about working with groups, we're going to look at some ethical issues when we're talking about the type of training when we're looking at multicultural training. Again, it is very important that we step outside of our comfort zone, that as helping professionals, again, we're not charged to know everything, but we have to remain teachable. We have to be in a place where we're willing to develop our thought process and our knowledge base when it comes down to multicultural and cross-cultural competence, that we have to remain teachable. Part of the issue that we deal with, again, when we're talking about working with groups that some people may not see as an issue, but when we look at social justice issues, and we'll get into talking about social justice and community and a community perspective in our next chapter. But when we're talking about social justice from a group perspective, we have to know that folks that are functioning and working towards advocating towards social justice, they belong to a very specific group. And the group that they belong to is the group that they are, again, working with to fight for change, working for change. In your textbooks, it basically reads, very simple statement that makes so much sense. The social justice movement and group work have been and still are a natural marriage. It is difficult to see social justice becoming pervasive in society without the sophisticated use of groups. Again, when we talk about any type of social movement that we have seen taking place, it is all coming from we could almost say a grassroots group effort where people are joining together, discussing the issue at hand and how it has impacted them and working towards improvement. Another thing that your book says in here is that group members can be invited to talk about their pain from social injustices that they have encountered. Group practitioners, that would be you, the helping professional, you must work towards healing experiences within the group rather than allowing potentially harmful interaction to occur. So basically meaning that while you do want to give people a chance to exhale, you don't want there to be an overkill of an exchange of war stories, meaning that after one person talks about their injustice, then another person talks about theirs, but makes theirs a little bit worse. While yes, things may not be right at that time, you as a helping professional need to be mindful that you must maintain control, for the mere fact that even when we're talking about social justice and working within groups, there's still this element of power and privilege that is developed within a group situation, whether it's a group situation for social justice or a counseling group. There is still this idea of entitlement that, depending on the issue at hand, depending on the injustice, depending on the personal anguish that one may be experiencing, you, the helping professional, have to be able to find a balance, a very significant balance when we talk about controlling the idea of privilege and entitlement in a group situation. the book goes a little bit further when we talk about multicultural and social issues or social justice issues as competent helping professionals. And it gives us some very specific elements that we have to look at, ethical guidelines that we need to look at from some of the various codes that we've been working with and introduced with from the beginning of this semester. And again, this is just requirements and again, looking at what your responsibility would be as a helping professional to do to prepare yourself in working in a group as you address multicultural and social justice issues. You need to get, as it says here, acquire the skills and knowledge necessary to work effectively with groups. Increase your awareness of myths, stereotypes, and assumptions that may be impacting this group. This one here, establish norms that are accepted, valued, and respected, and respect cultural differences. Your values impact the work that you do with your clients. So you have to be prepared to, whether you like a group, whether you like their position, whether you agree with it, it doesn't matter. What matters is the respect for the position and for the cultural differences. Very important that we follow that. Please make sure you read through those guidelines that are within your chapter and become familiar with those, excuse me, in regards to your responsibility as a helping professional. Now, there's a small section in your book that talks about co-leadership, and that's something definitely that I want you to think about and I want you to read about. The only thing really that I'm going to point out about co-leadership is that sometimes as a co-leader, it depends on the personality and the attitudes and the values and the agenda of the co-leaders and how that influences and impacts the members of the group. So definitely something that you need to take into consideration when you talk about facilitating a group, but definitely read through that section in your text. I want to get specifically to this section here that talks about how you manage a group, because there are a lot of different elements that you, the facilitator, must be mindful of from inception to conclusion. We start out with, and you see these here on the screen, informed consent, it's the selection of the group members, preparing the participants, looking at involuntary participants, the freedom to leave a group, psychological risk, confidentiality in the groups. So let's start with informed consent. Nothing has changed from the beginning to right now about informed consents. When we're talking about functioning and operating a group, the informed consent is that you, the facilitator of the group, you must inform all of the potential participants of that group of the nature of the group, the confidentiality that will be set forth, the outcome and the process of what's going to take place in a group counseling session. When we're talking about screening or selecting group members, you as the helping professional, this is where you want to make sure that you have a good balance of who's going to be participating in your group. There are some people that may be in your group involuntarily, some that are there voluntarily. But when we talk about the screening of the group, this is where we have to, again, make sure that everyone who we are looking at as possible participants are of the mindset that this is not individual counseling, but that they will be in a group, and it's continued education all along the way. When we talk about the involuntary participants, again, there are some folks who join groups voluntarily, some who are mandated to participate. Those who are mandated to participate are not always coming whistling and singing about sunshine, rainbows, and lollipops. They may be coming with a very negative attitude. They may be coming with very hurt feelings and not want to be there. Your job as the facilitator of this group is to make sure that those who are coming involuntarily, first of all, that they recognize the power of the relationships being formed in the group, recognize that, again, the participants, that they recognize that they have an opportunity to discuss their issues, but most importantly, as the facilitator of the group for involuntary participants, you must make sure that these participants follow through with the mandated treatment that they are entering into. When we talk about psychological risks, being in a counseling group, psychological risks get us to the place where we need to make sure that participants understand some of the things that may take place while they are participating in this group. They need to have an understanding that they are not going to be forced to do any of the counseling exercises, but they will be strongly encouraged. They're going to have the understanding about confidentiality in this group. But coming back to the psychological risk, some of the things we have to look for, one of the big things we have to look for is confrontation in a group. And I just want you to think about even your own family members. How is confrontation, how is that addressed and how is it handled in the family system? It's going to be very different in a group system. Confrontation, as the book addresses, sometimes it can be good, sometimes it can be bad. It can be a situation where it helps group members to face up to maybe something that they may have been hiding from themselves that may be hindering their development, going through the healing process. All in all, when we talk about the psychological risk, the number one thing that potential participants need to be mindful of is the possible disruption that they may be experiencing in their own lives. And that disruption sometimes comes down to the relationships that are formed. And when the relationships are formed, some of the things that come into play is this issue of confidentiality. When we talk about the disruption in their life, in their lifestyle, or in their lives, one of the things that we need to look at is social media and group work. You, as the helping professional, must maintain some very specific requirements and guidelines on the use of social media and how group members utilize it, the information that is shared on social media. Again, confidentiality is a big thing working in groups. And so there definitely has to be a message and an understanding that what's said in the group meeting stays in the group meeting. However, there are times when you have to break confidentiality. And the times that we're looking at when you have to break confidentiality would be, of course, in those issues when we're talking about the duty to warn, when we're looking at a group member threatening to harm themselves or someone else. There also may be an issue where if you, the facilitator, feel as though or have an indication that there is domestic violence, child abuse, elder abuse. Again, you're a mandated reporter, so you have to report these things. Also, there may be issues where we're talking about people in correctional facilities who may be verbalizing some things. Again, this is where you, the facilitator, have to make sure that you are mindful of what your responsibility is in divulging or in breaking confidentiality. Again, when we're talking about confidentiality, in groups, let me go back here to social media. Looking at social media as an issue, social media is only going to be an issue if you, the facilitator, allow your clients to make it an issue. We have to make sure that as we discuss with our clients, the rules and responsibilities within the group, also what the responsibility is outside of the group, the things that they may think that they can post on Facebook, on Snapchat, on Instagram. There has to be an understanding, and even there are consent forms that are signed by your participants in what's going to be posting online, and asking people to refrain from posting online. As the facilitator of the group, you also have to be mindful of how you respond to so-called friend requests or I want to follow you. Your job is not to make a friend. Your job is to assist people in the healing process. And that's across the board in any situation, whether it is group, individual, or family counseling. Making a friend is not your priority, but helping folks get to their goal of completion of healing, that indeed is your perspective. When we talk about terminating groups, there are different ways that groups can be terminated. If it is an open group is basically a type of group where people have this opportunity to come and go as they want to throughout the group. So an example would be something like Alcoholics Anonymous or Weight Watchers, self-help groups. You have that flexibility of coming and going. The thing that you have to be mindful of as a helping professional and facilitator of that group is you want to remind people of the impact their presence has and being a member of the group. So it's not that you want people to keep coming and going as they want to, but you want them to be actively involved in their own treatment, but also be mindful of the impact that their leaving has on the relationships that have been cultivated in the group. When we talk about closed groups, again, these are where there's a very specific start and an end date. It's not really recommended that people be encouraged to leave closed groups, but rather that they be encouraged to stay and to continue to work through the process, just for the mere fact that, again, there's a lot of relationships that are being built, and there is an expectation of an end result or an ending date. Whereas in the open group, again, that counseling session can continue on indefinitely. All right, so this is some of the information that we learn and that we focus on when we're talking about working with groups. So I want you to be mindful that working with groups is similar to working with your families and couple counseling in some areas, and specifically needing to know how to balance the personalities and looking at the development of relationships within the group. And with that being said, I want to let you know that I did post a video in this folder that gives you an example of how a group grows, the relationships that are established from the very beginning all the way through the end. The video that I posted is about 30 minutes, and I encourage you to take the opportunity to watch that video in its entirety. All right, good people, there will be an assignment and discussion post and a chapter quiz. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to contact me by email or on my office phone. I bid you love, peace, and bacon grease. We'll catch you on the flip side.